Thank you, Steve. It's Monday. It's the beginning of Internet Week. I think it's going to be the best session you see or go to. So let's start off right. How many people, agency people, do we have in the room right now? All right, cool. Sitting in the back, typical. How many brand people do we have here? Our special honored guests. One woman just went like that really quickly. Now, so all the agency guys don't know where she's sitting, obviously. How many media guys do we have here today? Come on, admit it. All right. Troublemakers, right? So listen, let me ask you a couple quick questions. How many people are doing basically some pretty robust, hardcore sort of planning around, media, around touch point planning in this room right now when it comes to their brand or their product marketing? Raise your hand. Huh, okay.
We are.
Okay, good. The rest of you just guessing, or how do you do it? So, quick question then: how many people are doing some what we're going to call today human-centric, more behavioral sort of consumer-centric planning and optimization for their brand or their product marketing? One guy in the back. I like that. How many people came here today to try to learn some new tricks? So that could be the way they start doing all of their planning and optimization for their brand and their campaigns. Okay, that's fantastic, because I think that's what we're going to do today. That's what we're going to talk about today. We've got an awesome panel. I'm going to start over here, and we're going to introduce ourselves real quickly and then dive right in.
Hi, I'm Mike Callahan, Vice President of Digital Marketing for Century 21 Real Estate. That includes all our consumer-facing website, mobile activities, search engine marketing, display advertising, etc.
BJ Emerson, VP of Technology for Tasty Delight and now Planet Smoothie as well, two franchise brands. Responsible for all the digital, social, mobile, etc., anything technology related.
Josh Glantz, General Manager for Publishers Clearinghouse, manage all the digital properties and email programs.
Johan Huber Gutierrez, recent addition to Resource Interactive, where I'm the Director of Convergence and Mobile Strategy, basically working with brands to help them understand the whole cross-channel mix and how that fits in establishing the relationships, but probably more well-known for my recent work where I was over at a large brand called Macy's, some of you may have heard of, where I did a lot of their mobile and social as part of the digital innovations group there, and prior to that was largely in the startup space.
Good morning, I'm Brian Maynard. I'm with Whirlpool Corporation. I have held a bunch of positions there over the years, including heading up marketing for the KitchenAid brand, CSR, and I currently head up marketing for JenAir brand.
Fantastic. So well, let's climb right in. A lot of us, those of us who have been doing sort of this kind of what again we'll call human-centric planning and optimization for a couple of years, a lot of us have been developing, I think, some pretty rich tools, some composite profiles of the audience, some interesting touch point models, some experience architectures. The interesting thing I think we all find when we start to market this way, when we start to think, when we start to plan, when we start to brief, when we start to produce, when we start to distribute, and when we start to optimize in this more human-centric way, is that we become inherently behavioral about what people are doing, how they're behaving, where they are, what they're doing, when they're doing it. So I'd like to start off with you, Josh. Talk about how that kind of approach for Publishers Clearinghouse has changed the way that you plan and optimize the mix.
When I saw Tim's first slide that said, win the moments that matter, I got very excited. Really defines what we're doing as a brand advertiser. The moments that matter for us are, number one, when a consumer is sitting in front of their television and sees our ad that suggests that they could win $10 million or some other life-changing sweepstakes prize. It also is when they then open up their email. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, our TV budget was designed to tell people that they were going to get an envelope in the mail and to look for it. Now it says you can participate and engage with Publishers Clearinghouse no matter where you are or when you see it. And that has really had a major impact on how we define our digital properties and how we mobile optimize them and how we move consumers through that engagement experience. Same thing goes with email. And we are, one of the larger email marketers out there, and we've had to take a complete inventory of not only our email marketing campaigns, but all of the landing page experiences behind them to ensure that we don't lose the opportunity to both engage and entertain consumers, but also to make sure that we have a monetizable event as well.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask a question. Johan, Josh just talked about email. Email sounds terribly old-fashioned in this new world of human-centric behavioral marketing. And yet, I think sometimes in the mix, it's probably very central. You've done some interesting work with a lot of different brands here, globally, CPG, FMCG, retail. What about email in the OLup mix, and how, if that's suggested by your human-centric planning model?
Well, the way I look at it is that if you start to break down the socioeconomic graph of your consumers, you'll see that each of them kind of has a different preference. And so that might mean, some of the older folks, like, for example, if I look at my mom's generation, they barely got the hang of email just a few years ago, but they love it, they're comfortable with it. But as you start to move down into younger generations, of course, text. However, the one thing that most people miss is that it's not necessarily that email's going away, but rather that you're seeing people using email more on their mobile device. But the problem is that most brand marketers have been so slow to adapt because their creative departments are so rigid and lead times are so long that they'll basically spit out one creative and be like, all right, that's what you're getting for your email campaign, and it's a lot of heavy images, and it doesn't work well when I pop it up on my mobile device, which is also, I think, driving the decline of email usage for a lot of people in a lot of areas. But those people who are working to optimize their emails for mobile is doing very well. Case in point, when I was working in Japan working with Lotte, and for those who don't know Lotte, they're basically like Nestle of Asia. They're huge. They're all over the place. But we did in a campaign where we just said, hey, let's take two behaviors that are very easy for a customer. One is customers very comfortable taking pictures with their phone. Two, customers, at least in Japan at the time, very comfortable using email. For them, email is integrated on the phone the way text messaging is in the US. It's just super fast. And we said, take a picture of your favorite little cookie characters. So they had all these little different cookie characters, and just send it in, and you get a little surprise. And we had in a single month over 2 million people participate in that campaign. Literally just take a picture, attach it to an email, send it into a designated address, and we sent back a response based on the picture that they took. Of course, we did some cool stuff with technology that Google and a couple other people later adopted from us with image recognition. But the point is, take those simple things and just enhance them, and you'll find you'll get great results.
Fantastic. BJ, a question. When it comes to, and I know we're here, the interesting thing I think I have found when you start to plan around the human, and then that suggests, as Mr. Reese pointed out and Josh shouted out, this idea of targeting that moment of truth or that moment of receptivity or that need state, you get some interesting mix. I think you get a different mix. When it comes to this kind of marketing, one would think that acquisition and awareness gets tricky because we know a little bit less about those people than we might if they were already a member, already a customer, already coming from a site that we could identify with things like cookies and such. When it comes to your category, that kind of tasty delight, talk about how acquisition is informed when you plan and optimize across this sort of more human-centric model.
Well, I think to what he was saying, the moments that matter for us in retail are obviously, hopefully when they're in the store. I mean, when they're having an experience around our product, how can we, interact around that when they're doing that? So, I mean, there's really a human element there. Well, listening, number one. So there's time element that you want to be aware of, and I think there's a fine line between creepy and creative kind of customer interaction when it comes to that. Hey, we just followed somebody, or they just checked in on Foursquare, and now we're having this conversation while they're still in Tasty Delight eating their frozen dessert or having their smoothie, and that can be a lot of fun. And it really takes a lot of discretionary emotional energy to have those conversations and to be creative, to have to provide a great experience around the product with these very personal mobile devices. So yeah, we've thrown a lot of mud on the wall as it relates to these things, location-based marketing, et cetera. So really just a lot of, we have just a lot of great stories that we're able to tell. And that's the thing, we just want to provide a great experience using the technology. It's not about the technology, it's about providing a great experience.
Mike, acquisition. When it comes down to figuring out, people buy delicious desserts and Frosties several times a month sometimes during the summertime. People may only buy 2 or 3 homes in their lifetime. What about that, getting in front of people at the right moment of truth?
It's definitely a challenge. It's actually every 7 years is the typical buying cycle. So a couple of things. You have to stay top of mind. Your brand awareness has to be strong. Century 21 is still the most recognized brand in real estate. We put a lot of energy into that. I think as we then look at those moments of opportunity, when somebody is entering that cycle, and that's the key, you try to intercept them when they're beginning to think about real estate, beginning to do their searches, make sure that we have very strong, presence online with search, both paid and SEO work that we do. And then mobile becomes such a natural. You clearly are looking for real estate. You're out and about, and those properties are around you. So looking at, we followed that pattern of, a channel approach. We were late to the game in getting a mobile site, getting our first iPhone app out there. But then we used that information that really informed us, and it allowed us to take a step back, take a look at that consumer, and find, that right now 36% of all homes are purchased by 25 to 34-year-olds. How can we reach that younger demographic, and how can we provide utility and value to them? And mobile is a perfect opportunity to do so.
That's great. And Brian, once they buy those homes from Mike, they got to put whiteware in them, don't they? So it's an interesting thought about this younger demographic and how we target them. I think we're going to get BJ to talk a little bit about a brand that markets almost exclusively around this much more sort of social paradigm. What's changed for your business and how you get in front of those people and get them to buy $700 or $800 or $2,000 machines for this new home?
Well, in Jen Air's case, it's like $8,000. So we have a variety of brands in our portfolio. OMMA is our value brand, and so OMMA actually has an app that is targeted towards younger people. There's a lot of comedy, humor involved in it, and so on. For Jen Air, it's our premium, our luxury brand. I find that your every 7 years interesting because the average appliance purchase is about every 8, and I would have thought that you would have been a little bit longer. The average cycle time from the time that someone makes a decision to buy an appliance to the time they actually pull the trigger, I'm going to remove the duress purchase here, the dreaded, my refrigerator doesn't work, but is about 8 months. And so it's a very considered purchase. We approach this like we do everything else from a very consumer-centric position. It's fascinating to hear people thinking about this in terms of being something new. I was thinking that consumer-centric, even Don Draper, I think, in some ways practiced that and before, right? But we know a lot about our consumer. We know a lot about their shopping habits. We know that it's not linear. We know they're doing a lot of research online. They're not typically driving down the road and saying, gee, I think I'll buy a $8,000 range. But they are on mobile devices. Our particular targets, the top 5% of the U.S. household incomes over $150,000. We know that they're very comfortable with technology. It's very likely that they have a mobile device. It's more likely than not, but they're not purchasing. It's very, very rare for somebody to purchase an appliance online, as I suspect it's probably true with real estate as well. So it is being there, providing an opportunity for them to meet the brand, to learn more about what we stand for. Are we going to fit their lifestyle? And then as they start to work their way down the purchase funnel, they want to know more technical things about it. They want to know how many BTUs the burners are, what it's going to look like in their home, those sorts of things that as they work their way down the tunnel, the purchase tunnel, which is why we created an app that allows them to take an image of our product and a picture of their current kitchen and slide our product in so they can see how it will eclipse what was there previously. So those are the kinds of things we're doing.
Fantastic. I'd like to switch gears a little bit. Josh, I think when I think about consumer or human-centric planning and marketing, I think that it's got to be massively data-driven in every regard it can be. And I think I'd like to talk a little bit about that. You have an interesting case that you attack, which is about what people are doing and where they're doing it, when they're doing it, and what kind of appliances they have in their hands. When it comes to leveraging data, how did that change the way you target your customer?
Well, if you look at our customer, they tend to be a woman 35 to 55 in the digital space. And we would have assumed, if we were just looking at them objectively, that they would be using either feature phones or perhaps just starting to use Android devices. What we found, and this has really caused a big change in how we approach all of our digital development, is that we are pretty much 50-50 between iOS and Android devices. And now, while we're just in development for our first app, we're focusing on iOS actually as the first platform for that. But we've really focused on making sure that all of our mobile web properties are fully viewable across all platforms.
So this raises an interesting question for me then. One of the things that I think a lot of us have been waiting for, clamoring for, suggesting about, I'm not quite sure who's doing a lot about it. I've asked this question over the last 3 or 4 years of people on the platform and the media side, and they say it's coming. But the idea of cross-channel cookies is intriguing when it comes to data, when it comes to being able to target, when it comes to being able to understand and attack the human need state. Any of you guys having any success with being able to get customers either to move them or for you to automatically track people across channels using behavioral dropped cookies?
Well, I think what makes us unique is that consumers are very, very willing to give us a lot of information, first-party data. And if all of you want your chance to win a big prize, you can go check out pch.com on your mobile device right now, and you'll see that it's a little unique because it asks for a lot of data, and yet we're able to get all of that, and we just match up your mobile registration with your desktop registration, and we can make sure we're giving you a consistent experience across both platforms.
That's fantastic. Johan.
Well, I mean, having spent a ton of time in behavioral ad networks, I mean, I was part of the team at Specific Media pre-funding when we pioneered behavioral ad targeting. And what I've seen in the mobile space is, and with the media, is really a repeat of what we went through with cookie tracking. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, people are so worried about. The reality is no. The reality, as we all know, is people are willing to exchange information if they feel that there's something of value they're getting. In your case, with Publishers Clearinghouse, you know, people are willing to give up a lot more data, but that doesn't necessarily apply to every brand. So you have to be conscious of that. So if you look at like what Yelp does, which I think is very clever, is that they don't ask for everything necessarily up front, but as you engage with them, they're asking for little bits more, little bits more. Now take that and add to the fact that there's tons of third-party data that you could potentially pull in, whether you're pulling in data from someone like MasterCard to say, hey, does this customer match up against someone who I have in my database, and does he shop at my competitors? Or being able to say, look, get someone to opt into your Facebook program, and then crawl that and say, okay, based on this person's likes, we can determine what this person's taste preferences are. And what I find is that in most organizations, the data lives in silos, and even if they can get to it, most of the biggest problems that I've encountered with any brand that I've worked with is that they can't seem to get a good view of it and make that data actionable. So great, now I've got all this data on my customer, but what do I do with it? How do I reach out to that customer? And that's where you have to start thinking about what's appropriate for that customer. Well, if I'm reaching out to grandma, you know, maybe sending a text message isn't the best idea, but if I'm sending something to, you know, someone in the 30s, 40s, hey, you know, they're more receptive to that. And so you kind of got to be conscious of that and think about not only that, but where are they at the time? Trying to get someone to watch a commercial on their phone while they're in the middle of, you know, a store in Herald Square, good luck, you know. But
so that's very interesting. So the combination of profile data, of behavioral data, of cookie data is very interesting. Situational data, where they are. BJ, and you can work a free plug into your book. Josh got his plug in for that campaign. I hope somebody is, or at least several of you have already tried to apply to win. BJ, I know that your book coming out is about how Tasty Delight was founded on and is growing on this idea that's massively sort of more social in its nature and how you get and keep customers. Talk about what the role of data in that model, whether it's with regard to location-based, whether it's regard to tracking online across mobile, or whether it's in regard to surrendered data from the customer profiles when it comes to selling your products.
Right. So I think it's interesting that as the social efforts and the mobile efforts came out of the IT department for us, you know, my background a little bit in BI, I was able to, you know, not only, you know, start capturing a lot of data, but capturing stories and curating these different customer experiences that we're, you know, trying to provide, and then turning around and telling that story in our book coming out in September. So as we're gathering these things, so one of the things that we did, I think that was smart, well, not only to capture these things from the beginning, Our loyalty program, one of the things we became known for now 2 years ago, we integrate our loyalty program with Twitter, Foursquare, and Facebook. So you can earn extra rewards by sharing your loyalty activities. So you just swipe the card, and a tweet goes out to your friends and followers saying, I just earned X number of points, and for that you get X points. So now imagine the data that we have to look at, to pull from. So we've started to look at that and to compare the Foursquare users versus Twitter versus Facebook and how close they are to our typical behavior of our core loyalty customers. So that kind of information by location is pretty interesting for us.
That's fantastic. That's a great model. So you talked about something very interesting about this idea. I'd like to connect it up into something that you said, Brian, about. We talked about buying cycles. Mike, let's start with you, and I want you and Brian both to talk about this idea of people talking to other people. I mean, it's a huge behavior, and if you look at, talking about buying cycles, I was working for an auto brand that did some research about 2 years ago, and they found that over the last 3 or 4 years, the consideration cycle for buying a new car it literally cut itself in half. And what research told us was, not too dissimilar from what BJ is finding out, was that what happened was people were not going through the typical research process that one used to go through, of waiting on the couch for some information to come their way, and then going out and calling up dealers and arranging for, to test ride 4 or 5 or 6 cars. They spent that time online. They spent that time researching. That meant that time talking to friends. Talk about the role of that kind of referral in getting peeps to buy their next home.
Yeah, I think it's huge. 92% of all home buyers search online. So clearly they're looking to harness all of that knowledge and information that's out there about the real estate properties, the locations, the neighborhoods. We've seen, and the analytics now available to us across all of these channels is phenomenal. 20% of the mobile users share the listings that they've found with someone else. And I think clearly friends and family, they're using that network to inform that decision, get opinions, get others to provide that information. And for those who have bought homes, I think you're all familiar with this concept of, where do you find your real estate agent? It's typically through a referral from a friend, from a family member. So those channels are critical to us. And I think one of the things we're really trying to continue to find ways to improve is how to get our agents and brokers engaged in utilizing those social channels to its optimal effect.
That's great. Brian, how about you in the organic mix? How does a referral work its way in for $8,000 machines?
Yeah, well, referrals, I mean, like almost anything you buy, word of mouth is very, very important in the mix. One of the things that we would like to think is that our purchase process is very, very linear. It's not. People, about 80% of our folks go online, they do a lot of research, then they go to a retail, then they come back online, then they talk to some friends, then they go back on, so they're really all over the board. It's a big, considered purchase, and our goal is to be very human-centric and be where they are, and provide them the information that they want, when they need it, where they need it, so that ultimately, as I like to say, we like to shorten the distance to the cash register. The issue, one of the big issues that we have, same at Century 21, is in your case you have the agents. In our case, we have the sales associate on the floor, and the sales associate on the floor holds big. They have a big opinion in the process, and they sway consumers' opinions very, very much. So we spend an awful lot of time with them, but we also have a very difficult time with them embracing any sort of technology. So what do? We take a very old school approach. We fly them in for 2.5 days of training at our training facility in Chicago, where they immerse themselves in the product. And we know that after they've attended this training, their average sales go up 8%, and their average sales value increases by 44%. So we know that that's, it's old school. But when we introduce them to genair.info, which is a place that only they can go to get all kinds of information, but there's still a ways. There's still this gap between the average, the guy and the gal who are selling on the floor and their sophistication around what sorts of technology they will use or not use and embrace themselves to.
Fantastic. One of the things that I love about today's topic and the agenda that we have for the conference here is it wasn't long ago, I think I sat in a panel, perhaps even moderated one, where it was like, do you have a separate mobile strategy and do you have a smartphone strategy and do you have a separate tablet strategy? Today, I think we're moving the ball down the field by saying, what's our human strategy? I'd like, if I could, to go to Josh and also to you, Johan, about a question. Both Brian and Mike started to get at this idea of cross-channel and referral and tracking, and what I think is the holy grail is this idea of attribution. Okay, how do we not just develop and design a different way around the human model, but how do we begin to optimize and actually say, well, we can tell that this channel is driving traffic or adherence or affinity or actually conversion to this traffic when they're in that sort of mix. That takes a very robust, you talked about the silos, Johan. I want to start with you. How do we drop those silos? How can you point to a couple of cases where you have been able to get information from one channel, that, a silo, into the other to optimize the full mix?
Well, gosh, I could take, let's see, a certain big retail fashion brand we all know, where you were dealing with a scenario where literally you could not do channel-specific attribution, say, on offers. They're heavily dependent upon offers and really going after that impulsive, emotional buyer. Take the logic out of it. I mean, we've had a lot of, I think, some good examples here about some items that are very high. They're very expensive, so there's a lot more consideration, a lot more logic. But when you go into the CPG category or fashion, where things can be more impulsive, I think just looking at the basic things, are the offers that you're putting out there, are they even, can they be unique and can they be redeemed across channel? For example, some brands I've seen struggle where they can only do an online redemption of this particular offer, or they can only do an in-store redemption of this offer. So if you think about the inherent nature of mobile, I don't care like if it's online or offline, just let me redeem it. If I want to go into the store, let me take it into the store. If I want to go online, let me take it online. One thing I've seen, just a super basic thing from a UI perspective, I mean, just it blows my mind how many brands will set up things where they'll say, here's our offer, and then they'll give you the code, but then you have to jump to 3 or 4 other pages to get further down the checkout process till you can actually punch it in. So then you're on your mobile phone, you're like, wait, what was that code again? Or what was that thing I needed to use? So one of the things we were able to do was we were able to do some POS upgrades where we were able to actually say, okay, we basically mapped every single offer to each and every single channel and tried to make it unique. And I think that helped us bridge the gap. But there's still so many gaps when you're dependent upon these really bad analytics platforms that are out there. For anyone who's been using, I won't throw the names out there, but you probably know who I'm talking about. Those guys break when you go from even mobile, for example. We would drive people into a mobile URL, but when you redirect, it breaks the cookie in some cases, so you actually lose the tracking. And so you have to think about, work very closely with your developers and say, how do we reduce the number of redirects so we can get better attribution there? And how do we present unique offers that are redeemable across channel? And then, if you can, tie it to a customer ID of some kind. It doesn't have to be their name. It doesn't have to be their card. It could be their phone number. Why not use their phone number as the identifier? I know Taco Bell's been doing this recently in their labs, where they're tying everything to the customer's phone number. So you can go into Taco Bell, redeem, and you just punch in your phone number at the POS, and boom, you're out the door. So I think those are some of the ways that are super low-hanging fruit that people aren't even doing now.
Fantastic, Josh.
If you don't have a way to track your customers across platform, that you should drop everything else and figure that one out first, because you're missing a huge opportunity. We have a unique customer because they are, on the one hand, they're actually impulse shoppers, but they are passionate, loyal, dedicated participants and visitors to our properties, and that helps us create a nice profile on them. If you go back, though, to answer your question about this, 50 years ago, Publishers Clearinghouse was, of course, strictly offline, sent out a piece of mail to everybody in America 8 times a year. Some of you probably got those, but your parents certainly did. 10 years ago, we went on, actually probably 25 years ago, we realized we could send more mail, so we started going closer to weekly, and now we can send physical mail several times a week to the people who want our physical mail. 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, we go online and we replicate that business through email, and we had a single email as much as once a day Then we evolved to multiple email programs offering different ways to engage with us. And you could theoretically be on 4, 5, 6 different email programs that go out anywhere from twice a week to 7 times a week. Add in mobile. You now have the ability to engage with us all day. And we've used our analytics, both our web analytics as well as the tokens that we develop that we use to track every engagement with our business to see when people engage with what different property. And by doing that, we're able to find the gaps. And those gaps are significant opportunities for us to engage either on a different device, whether it be a tablet. Right now we track tablet as web, not mobile, but there are ways that tablets are mobile, but usually we find that the tablet is used in the house. But mobile devices go with you 24 hours a day, and your desktop computer is in front of you for much, much less. So huge opportunity to expand engagement and drive additional revenue as well.
And just to kind of add to that, I mean, the issue of mail, I think people underestimate that, you know, there's already dollars being spent, and so as long as your company's spending money, why not partner more closely with the people who are doing stuff with that? I've seen tons of mailers go out that don't even have basic things like the company's website. I mean, still today. But even thinking about, are you providing the customer with a text-in option with some kind of unique keyword that is tied to that particular piece of media? Or if you're going to put something to scan, I personally prefer just do straight image recognition and you can watermark the page. But for those who insist on using the QR code and you want to force your customer to download the scanner, you know, you can put unique codes within that, which could actually be unique to the customer. So, you know, I may be getting this thing. Allow me to interact with it right away. I did a lot of work with some catalog companies in Japan, and one in particular saw 60% of their sales eventually coming through just snapping on the products within the catalog and then doing a single-click checkout on their phone right then and there. So if you want to talk about channels working together, I mean, it was fantastic. And I mean, people talk about Tesco. We were doing that stuff years before in Japan, before, you know, my buddy at Icon Lab in Korea got it and sold it to Tesco. So it works. I mean, the whole cross-channel is there. Don't throw it away. Leverage it, but provide the customer an easy way to opt into it. A big mistake that I've seen people do, like for example, at a certain department store, you know, they put these huge big QR codes in the middle of the store and ask the customer to scan it where they have no connectivity. And, you know, how's that going to go over, right? You know, so you have to think, again, be context aware. You know, the type of media that you want the customer to interact with, whatever's going to be on the other side of that, think about where the customer is that they're engaging with it. If they're outdoor and if they're in a place with greater connectivity, sure, you can serve a richer experience. We talked about HTML5 ads. I think Goldspot Media, for example, just launched a really cool ad unit that it detects if you're on Wi-Fi or not. So if you're on Wi-Fi, it sends you the Uber video ad, which is like really rich and great and engaging. But if you're in a place with bad connectivity, they send you a light version, which, you know, says, hey, go to here, bookmark this, check it out later, or, you know, put in your email so we can start a dialogue.
It's great. The do's and don'ts are extremely cool for us to live and learn. I want to switch a little bit gears here. BJ, let's talk a little bit about this idea. I mean, the one discipline in marketing that I know of that actually named after a human is CRM, right? This is the place, the channel, the discipline that we think of as customer relationship marketing or management. You're in a very interesting category, and I know you've got a unique philosophical approach. What I'm interested in getting at is, and I know a lot of us already did not admit this morning to doing, you know, our planning around more traditional media and touch point, but I do believe that much of our advertising dollars, as it were, are spent currently using more traditional media models when it comes to segmentation and when it comes to buying audiences and all those wonderful things that some of us are spending a lot of money, perhaps inordinately, on right now. Talk a little bit about how CRM, how data, you know, as a BI guy, talk about your new modeling or profiling of the audience that may be a little departure from more traditional sort of media segmentation. How do you look at and think about and learn from these profile or models that you're developing around your audiences?
Well, I think it really starts again with the whole listening, and part of my job is to impart these perspectives that I'm seeing in these conversations that we're having online or through the mobile experience, impart that to the rest of the organization so that we can move from where we were with you know, what I call social negligence, and now many companies I think are at a place of mobile negligence. and how do we move beyond that into becoming a social-friendly brand, or moving mobile into the enterprise and integrating these things. And that starts with listening and getting people like people in marketing to listen in ways perhaps that they've never done before. And so that starts getting people visibility to the conversations that are happening, and then they make that connection and say, hey, this is really powerful. Look at this story. Look at what happened here. Look at how our most recent marketing campaign is in real time. Look at the results that we're getting. So these are the conversations that I'm having with the people in marketing, and that's really for us where it starts. And then over the years, as you're kind of tracking these relationships with these customers, and sometimes they move to Facebook or Twitter. We've connected through location-based marketing. How do you tie all those together? And there's platforms for that. There's very expensive software that you can certainly use for that. And there's some ways to do it on the cheap. So I think we kind of represent the little guys that really don't have much of a budget for these things, and that's where you really have to expend some extra energy to keep track of those relationships.
Cool. We're going to count down to getting some questions from the audience in a couple of minutes. So I just wanted to talk about one area here. Both Mike and Brian, you would assume that traditionally selling homes and selling expensive appliances have relied very heavily on advertising, on more traditional broadcast advertising, and even now perhaps more online or more traditional media and advertising. Talk about, video is very interesting to me when it comes to behaviors. There's an argument to be made based upon the statistics that we see recently that there's nothing that is consumed or shared or viewed or engaged with more online right now or anywhere right now than video and in the average person's life. If we're doing behavioral marketing, how does that inform how we change what we develop and design and brief for video beyond 30-second TV spots, and what we do with that video, and what role video might play in the mix, Mike?
Sure. So one example, we were one of the advertisers in this year's Super Bowl. So part of that was some pregame spots as well as a 30-second spot during the game itself. Traditional TV advertising. But what that led to was a full, I'll say, multi-channel campaign where we looked at earned media, social networks, our YouTube brand channel, and really trying to, actually we did not just a landing page, we redesigned the home page just for that weekend, where we have typically a background image of homes that we rotate. We put a football image out there. We had the ads in a video player. We knew a lot of the traffic game of day that night was going to be people who were looking for the TV commercial that they just saw. And it was amazing to see a tenfold increase in the mobile traffic, 62% increase in our website traffic, and the number of plays on YouTube, about 275,000 plays of that commercial on YouTube. So really looking, again, a great example, I think, of looking across these channels, those multiple touch points, and this was clearly a point in time, the third period of the game, where all of a sudden it all came together, and it was great to see that interaction take place.
That's killer. Brian, top that, man.
So as we, with no Super Bowl ads for us, as we have been repositioning the Gen Air brand over the last couple of years to a luxury space, we don't do television. But we do some traditional print. We do online. We do, OLA, SEO, et cetera. But all of those things that we do try to drive to, to the next level, right? So we have an analog version of our app that's in Architectural Digest that has a die-cut range or a die-cut built-in refrigerator that you pull out and says, hold back from your current range 5 feet, close one eye, and you can see how we will eclipse the competition. Scan a QR code, go to our Facebook page. All of those things, of course, are on our, on our ads, and there you'll find there are a number of videos. We've introduced this series we're calling Masterclass, which allows for a much more two-way conversation with our target. We have to be in all of those various channels because the people who are selling our product or the owners of the retail space expect us to be in Architectural Digest. Architects and designers who are very, very influential in the purchase process read that magazine and they won't take us seriously unless we're there. So, you know, we need to be in those places where it makes sense for us to be to affect all of the key influencers. And furthermore, we know that if somebody has seen our ad in Architectural Digest and interacted with us digitally somewhere, their perception of our brand goes up dramatically. It goes up greater than the sum of the individual parts. So you have to make sure the marketing mix is there.
I'm sorry, new school print versus new school the Super Bowl. I think that's a tie. That's awesome stuff, both you guys. Steve, do we want to take some questions? Are we okay? We keep going? We got a couple. I'm looking at the clock here. All right, so to me, I think the last question I'd like to ping down for each one of you is this. How close are you? Any really tight and actionable pieces of advice you might offer the folks out here, whether they're brand, whether they're media, whether they're agency guys, when it comes to this idea of getting human-centric about your marketing? Josh.
I'm sitting in the other seat right now because in the last year I've gone to a half a dozen mobile conferences, and every single time, especially when there's a panel of brands or agency people, I ask the same question. I say, how often are you seeing advertisers not only modify their TV ads, but the experiences behind them, because they know now that consumers are sitting in front of the TV with a mobile device? It used to be, I think, you know, what probably changed internet, the engagement between TV and the web the most over the last 10 years was when was it The Apprentice came out, and all those hero brands were advertising, and at the end they'd send you to a special page on Yahoo, and that was really big. That was a big deal, but nobody was doing that knowing that people were now going to those types of experiences on their mobile device, whether from a TV show or from an ad itself. And I think that we're really close. I mean, PCH as a brand is there. We know it. We know that that's what's happening. And we've seen over the last year that